you're one of the few people that we could just be texting and then I'm like, record a podcast, and you're like, yeah, like there's not a lot of people in this world where they'd probably just say like, dude, not everything needs to be content, just chill. Like it could just be a text, like relax. But
this is my whole bet. Like, I don't know. My whole bet is owned media is going to rule the world, right? And so if I don't believe, I don't know, I'm just trying to practice what I preach, right? And we're seeing it work. So of course, I'm just going to continue.
It just works. It just works. Again, whenever we chat, we talk about the pros and cons of some of this stuff, but at what point should conversations just be private? And is any conversation private anymore? It is right now, but in the future, where are we heading?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. There's a very specific line for me of what is public and what is private. You'll never see me talk about personal life. People ask me on shows like, where do you live? And that type of thing. And I'm even with that hesitant. Or what's your background? It's very specific. I'm not going to talk about my childhood public setting. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. There's like layers to all of it, I think. And for a long time, I also was just like, no, I don't want to do this. I was just going to do it very under the radar. But I don't know. Everything was pointing towards this direction. Owned media being this incredibly powerful leverage tool, especially with, I don't have a pedigree. I went to a bumfuck state school, right? There's nothing there. So this was like that's a way to basically, yeah, right. Yeah.
I feel like that's its own pedigree.
Yeah, exactly. I failed out of bumfuck state school. Put
that on your LinkedIn
failed out twice. Exactly. But yeah, I think with that said, it's just this was this way to basically build a trust at scale and then also have this own distribution channel. So anyway, yeah. With that said, let's get into the meat, baby. So we were texting earlier. I'm going to set the scene. Earlier. And I stumbled on this data. It was AI background check. And the graph is going crazy. Let me share my screen and I can show what this actually looks like because we can do this.
Do you mind if I actually said quickly? Yeah. It showed me just how awesome of an entrepreneur you are. So I was walking with my partner. We were outside. We were getting some sunshine. As the nerdy founder couple we are, we started talking about different like strategies for growing our businesses. And one of the ideas I had, I was like, oh, it'd be awesome if we, like, for all disclosure, Cody helps with running our podcast and publishes it and runs a newsletter on it. And it's just awesome. And I had an idea today of, it'd be really nice if I could do better research that's automated on my guest. Some of my guests that come on, like I can do the research for, I know that maybe, or I look at LinkedIn and I can do it. But I was like, wow, it'd be an amazing part of the service if maybe right before the conversation, I get a little brief that says, here's Cody. Here's not just his scraped like Twitter or LinkedIn profile, but here's some really interesting insights from him. I shot you the text within 7 seconds. You had responded, and then you had asked for, give me an example of a guest. And then another 3 minutes after that, you had sent me a potential brief that, as like the MVP. And I was like, this guy, because it's really important. I just didn't have
meetings this morning, so I could actually do actual hands-on keyboard work.
Yeah, but I'm grateful for you for doing that. And I think it makes like a founder and an entrepreneur really stand out depending on like how available they are. And sometimes I could go a little bit too far because you have to have your own work-life balance, but I appreciate you for doing that. It's something that I try to do a lot myself. And that's how this conversation started. So just wanted to give you like kudos for that vibe.
No, dude, I love it. Yeah. And then from that too, right? I think this is how actually companies get discovered is like you have this like immediate need and then that evolves into, oh, what if we could just go do this for anybody? And then quickly the conversation evolved into talking about, I want to be able to scrape their entire back catalog of tweets or LinkedIn posts or their personal website or something they wrote in college or whatever we could find, aggregate that into a context window and then pull out the interesting component pieces of them from that. Quickly evolved into, well, sounds like a background check. And Jay had done some work like this in the past. And so anyway, yeah, again, this is immediately I go and see if there's any data around this. And what we discover immediately is that there is search volume for this type of thing. So what we're looking at here is AI background check. So this is the search volume for it over the last couple of months from an increased standpoint. So this is a super early trend. This is something that could 100% be built. And then the distribution mechanism would be going after all of the background software that exists out there already, like background checking software. So anyways, we could talk about that initial like distribution piece, but talk to me how you think about this product, Jay. Like how would this like actually work from like building this out based off of your experience when you were at your previous companies and what you guys were doing there?
Yeah. And so for the audience, like what we're going to do is just mock up exactly how I would just riff with Cody on this idea. Like instead of just shooting him a call or a text, I just wanted to put it on recording and see what kind of juice comes from that. So let's see how this goes. So a quick like little primer on the background check market. So I used to work at LinkedIn for 5.5 years. LinkedIn is a pretty dominant player in the HR space. Usually the platform didn't interact that much with the background check market until there were a bunch of different places where it could have, but the thing that I ended up helping with was when we launched our applicant tracking system. There's a CRM for salespeople, there's an applicant tracking system for recruiters and HR managers. Cool. And through there, I started partnering with different background check providers I needed to integrate into the applicant tracking system that LinkedIn had. And so I got to learn a little bit more about the background check market, would be like executives in the space and everything. The background check market, and then later, as I helped scale up the verification team at LinkedIn, we interacted again with the background check market. A lot of stuff I won't be able to talk about that coherently and clearly, but that's like kind of the background of my own information about the background check market. It's a pretty messy one, I'd say. The way that it works is that it's just a supply chain of different data that gets like sold to each other and then packaged up differently until it gets to the background check provider, which then sells it to a client. So there's just layers of different like data providers that then sell a little bit here, a little bit there, and then they end up packaging it up really nicely and then give it to someone else, which is then the background check provider.
Classic unstructured data to structured data is what I'm hearing as soon as I hit.
And that information actually costs quite a bit of money today because there's a few players that have ownership of the right aggregation of that data to then give it to the background check company who then sells it to the client. And so I think one of the reasons why we're seeing that uptick, I'm curious just how you perceive Google Trends like that. I'm not the expert in that, is that the cost of a background check is increasing a lot because of the different brokers of data and how they're increasing the input cost for a background check provider to then give it to a customer, which then is increasing the cost for just like normal companies. And so
is it probably like PE came in, bought up a bunch of these companies, and then they're just like increasing prices? Is that what you think the market's happening, or what do you feel like? Is there a larger reason, or just harder to do this?
Yeah, I think the industry has been beholden on, I'm just going to come on and say it. The industry has been beholden on the work number. The work number is developed by Equifax. And that has been one of the inputs for background check companies to be able to verify individuals because they've done the hard work to be able to aggregate the information and then be able to present it to a background check provider. I don't know why they're increasing their prices a lot. You can make some armchair quarterback assumptions. I don't know enough about that space, but it could be incumbent, like feeling pressure, wanting to ensure they increase profits. Like it's likely something along the lines of that. And so I think that has led to maybe an interesting time in the market where not only background check providers, but clients, like it's companies that want to do background checks. Some people are probably looking for an alternative solution. So when you look at a trend like that, what are the 2 to 3 things that you tick off in your mind of what does that mean exactly? I don't really know how to perceive Google Trends sometimes. I'm like, do you just drop everything and follow the trend, or what are like the pitfalls of that, or like where does your mind go with that piece?
Yeah, so what I'm always looking at is if I see a curve that suddenly goes up and to the right within a huge market and it's with an evolving technology, then immediately my like radar starts going off. I hear sirens and I smell money. But the bigger thing here is that you have to think about, I'm trying to ride a bigger wave and be early enough to that bigger wave and be in a position where I can ride that. So like Swell was a great example of this when we initially built this. Like we were just positioned really well to ride that initial wave. And that's why that company like did all right. So with this, it's the same idea. So a couple of things that I immediately think about or the questions I asked is, okay, is this a larger wave that's happening? Is this an established market? How big is that market? And then if we entered that market, what would be the growth vector that would be possible within this, right? And so then immediately, and we did this in the text thread, went down that rabbit hole. I went to Perplexity. So I saw this graph. I'm like, holy shit. Go to Perplexity, and then I immediately look at, okay, what is the total addressable market or the TAM of the background check industry? It looks like it's about $3.6 billion a year, and then growing at about 9% compounding year over year. And so they're saying, hey, by 2030, I think is what it said, it would be at around 8.9 million. So again, going through the checks of, is this a good idea or not? First off, it's like, can the product be built? Yes. Unstructured data to structured data. Is there a trend of people searching for it? Yes. Is it a big enough market that it's interesting to go into? Or even if you only got 0.1% of the market, 1% of the market, if you were doing a self-funded company, you could probably go raise money in this as well. Is the other side of it. But so like I see all those things. And then the next step is, okay, cool. Is there a way to go and grow this that's actually like possible? And this part we can do live and I can actually show like what that looks like. But before we jump into that though, I'm curious, like when you think about the initial version of a product like this, Jay, like how do you approach it from what's the MVP that you put out? And what is that? And again, this is hard to do without actually getting people into the product and understanding kind of that killer feature. But you have a little bit of background, I feel like. I'm curious to get, it probably is just like a price point and its speed that this happens at is, I'm assuming, what would be the differentiator. But I'm curious your thoughts like on how you would think about, even to go into the technical components of this, what does that product look like, right? Are you going and we're using scraping tools, putting into a vector DB, pulling out the relevant information, putting that into a context window? How would you break down like the technological side of this from a product standpoint?
Yeah, no, good question. I would first start not technically. I would first start with it's actually more of like business product. So I'll match back up with you. It's more like who is the first customer to be able to go after and like the first use case to power. And then I would debate that. So we can debate that right now. And then I would do like the Greg Eisenberg vibe. And even you do this really well. I would just tweet about it or LinkedIn post about it.
Totally.
That's actually the MVP.
Throw up a public forum.
That's actually, I think, consistently the MVP. And it could be posed as a question to the ICP that you have a hypothesis that it would support. So for example, like, okay, let's say background checks are really expensive today. Who would be spending the most on background checks today? Then probably people who need to hire a lot of people every year. So then I would say, I'm on ChatGPT right now. Actually, I can maybe share screen too and just show what the vibe is.
So it's probably going to be companies that like high number of employees. I'm guessing service industries. Like I could see HVAC, I could see construction, I could see anybody that's the hiring managers at those types of companies. So then I would go and be like, okay, cool. Can we find everybody that is in the construction industry that is within HR, within their job title or something like that? That would be the distribution vector that I would be thinking about this from. So it's really interesting. Actually, from the product side, you're probably doing the same thing. It's like, oh, cool. Here's this person. Like, we're going to think about how they would actually use this. And I'm thinking about how the hell do I get in front of them?
Yeah. Yeah. Ideally, those are synced up, right? Like you're thinking about product from a distribution perspective first. And I've learned a lot from you of how to be able to do that. So if I were to look at this like section, like when you think about like large employers and corporations, and then maybe I'd prioritize who'd be the easiest to get a hold of, right? Instead of just,
government would be hard, right?
Hard. Yeah. Enterprises would be hard unless we're like relying on
healthcare would be networks. A no-brainer. That could be, I immediately that would jump out at me.
As like a go, like you should go to healthcare, you mean?
Yeah, I would think about that just because the amount of, if you look at most states, especially like in the middle America states, like the majority of those are the biggest employers are healthcare providers in some form. So it's going to be the hospital systems, or it's going to be people that work in insurance, et cetera. When you look at the GDP of some of these states as well, it's plus over 50% is basically in some way related to healthcare. And so if you just think about that, like that's a huge amount of people that you can go after from an employment standpoint. And probably less restrictive to get in front of or have those initial conversations with than like going to government. But maybe I'm totally wrong. I'm curious your thoughts.
No, it goes to something more personal. Me and my co-founder have been thinking about this recently is what's our unfair advantage? So there's like a criteria of, okay, and let's use this as an example. It's okay, who has the most pain in this? That would be who's running the most amount of checks, right? And then second, it would be maybe a criteria of who would be easiest to sell into or who would be the easiest to be able to get in front of. Again, large employers like corporations, government agencies, it depends. If you and I come from DC and we had a bunch of networks who were in government, maybe actually our mind would go straight to government. Your mind went to healthcare. You have had experience in the health tech industry before, right? And like biotech, you have networks in there. So you're like, oh, I know that's going to be somewhere that I should go spend some time in. And so that's a very personal decision because it's like, where can I plug into? For me, I was thinking actually gig economy and on-demand platforms. I can go call up some homies who work at DoorDash and Uber and and just, so it's interesting depending on who you are, what your unfair advantage is, who you can go speak with.
Totally. I think that to repackage that idea, it's really, and every entrepreneur should think about this as well, right? This is the whole point of it. I'm trying to, everything I do is this ecosystem that compounds on itself. And again, to give a concrete description of this, like we built Swell AI, which then we spun out Draft Horse, which then we spun out Landing Cat. And they're all doing different things, but like the goal is similar in what they are, right? It's like they fit into this larger ecosystem. It's the same thing with your like what you're building and like choosing the companies that you should build. It's you're focusing on, oh, cool, I've like lived in this world. So like, how do I do something that is within that? And I keep cycling in and out of this, but every rotation that you go, like that I guess scope or like the sphere of that you're interacting with gets larger. And so you get like more opportunity as you level up. And connect this to another thought, like just jumping to, I build humanoid robots that can talk to me and interact with the physical world around them, that's not actually probably the best way to do it. The first version of this is cool. I built this shitty little software tool that then evolved into a platform that I then sold. And then I built a hardware company that does some small gadget that then levels up into, okay, now I'm building humanoid robots.
And that was, that sounded like the founder.
Really, that is the exact thing. And so I think that you talk to a lot of entrepreneurs though, and they're like, oh, I'm going to go and do this massive thing first. I think it's way more, and there's outliers that like can do that, right? But they're built different. I think for a lot of people, like a way more likely path is doing that compounding effect. And we're just talking about the same thing here. Like when we think about what are the companies that we're going to build this thing, and then it evolves into this, and then it evolves into this over those revolutions.
So if we were to go and pick maybe the healthcare providers in this space, right? Okay, so now we've identified that maybe the background check market is, so we've seen the AI background check trend. We've done a little bit of market sizing to see how big the market is. A quick comment on this piece. People that are coming from bigger companies will stumble on this because they see, I think you were saying, I saw even larger market, like $13 billion. If you're coming from a larger company, you may think that's not big enough. But if you're bootstrapping or you're a small company, that's a lot. You don't need a lot from that. I chat with people that are coming from these big companies and like, it's only like a $2 billion market. And you're like, no, but what are we talking about? And so it's something to unlearn. And so I actually saw like 13 billion. Cool. We found a market. We feel good about it. Like now we're trying to get a sense of like how big the pain point is from within that market of which industry. We're actually going into more of a personal piece, which is what's our unfair advantage. And so now we think that healthcare providers and like running their background checks every year would be interesting. I would actually push back a little bit on this piece because we'd have to be careful about which the other criteria with background checks, which is to be mindful of, is the regulation around it.
Totally.
Because when you're doing background checks, you're pulling information that's like very personal, at least an official background check, right? You're running credit reporting, you're running like your credit score, you're like running like information on your social security number. There's a lot of regulations that come with running a background check. And so you'd probably want to think about a way to not enter into that space and to do something that could maybe be without, maybe you're splicing off part of the industry that you don't have to directly attack like that vector.
Totally.
And so
that would probably be the entry point, but then I would immediately think, okay, cool. Like that, if it is hard to get into and to do it effectively from because of the regulation, it makes it a hard industry. That's a moat immediately in my mind.
Sure.
So okay, cool. Like how could we figure out what is that entry point vector? Once we get that foothold and we're suddenly profitable, then it's okay. Now how do we level up into this thing that is actually more of a protective like space? Because if you look at the industry, there's not that many players, right? It looks like there's 8 or 9 big ones, which I imagine like that. Again, that to me, if we think about 3.6 billion or 12 billion spread out over that group of people, right? That means that there's 1.3 billion per person within that industry on a yearly revenue standpoint. Again, I think that's a great market to enter. But yeah, I'm curious your thoughts there on the privacy. Maybe what it could be is like, it's just like you're doing like social media background checks or something smaller to begin with. For employers, did they say something crazy at some point that's going to come back to hurt us later, right? Which is also great use of using RAG that just goes and you scrape their entire tweet history or something like that. But
so why don't we dive into that piece then, right? We're looking at and maybe we do a quick competitive analysis. Who are the top social media background check companies? I always like to prompt like browse online just in case for ChatGPT, just so they can search a little bit, because I'm sure there's a market already existing here today. So there's these firms here. They all use a little bit of AI. So Sterling is a really large background check provider. So when you look at this, Cody, and you're seeing like competitors that already exist within like the social media background check market, what do you think are still the ways to be able to differentiate, leveraging like something to do with AI in this space?
Yeah. No,
where does your mind go in terms of differentiation here?
Yeah. So first off, I look at this as validation that the market exists. Cool. So number one. I don't want to build anything new. I want to build like a better thing in that space. And that better thing, it doesn't have to be better product only. It can be better price point, better time, thinking about the resources that people care about. There's money, time, and mental energy. We're trying to sell them back one of those things with whatever the service is that we're doing. And a little bit of status, but that's its own special category, right? Because it's like luxury goods fit into this whole other, it's like quantum mechanics. It has its own rules of how it exists. But yeah, so I would look at that. I would then try to identify, okay, how big are these companies? What are their, just looking, what are their headcounts, et cetera. And then a lot of the times I feel like with these, especially if they're older companies and they're saying they're doing AI, it's like this bolted on solution that isn't from the ground up built. And so then I look at that and I'm like, oh, that's a huge product opportunity, especially if you have knowledge in this space already on how to build this. I'm of the opinion, especially with like self-funded companies or anything that you're bootstrapping, I don't really care if there's other people in the market. I would actually be more worried if there isn't. It's way different if you're going in funding because it's just, you can spend that, right? It's a bigger risk. But if there's other people there, a way to think about it is if you look at any large city, like there's hundreds of window washing companies and they all make money. And so how I try to take that idea and then apply it to this is, there can be hundreds of different pieces of software that all make money in different ways through this industry that it's in. Yeah, anyways, that's just like the mental model that I would approach this with and think about it from the differentiation piece that I would try to do is probably going to be time and money. All these people are incumbents. I imagine, just again, from experience, like this industry probably got gobbled up by PE at some point. And they're going to have what's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to double prices. So you're going to come in and be like, yo, we can do it in 24-hour turnaround time. And also we're going to do it at half the cost of what you're paying currently. An employer is going to be ecstatic about that. And that, I think that's the way to do the differentiation. And for them, that also is very hard for them to pivot on that, right? Because suddenly they are like they'll be beholden to, can I make this company make more profits? So if they're going to have to decrease their prices to become competitive suddenly, there's no way that they're going to be able to get the board to okay that. There's no way that they're going to be able to turn the ship internally, especially if they built out a huge sales organization. It's really interesting. My friends are building a company in the cyberspace. Jay, they're going after Vanta, right? It's this company called Onely. I just interviewed the founder. Actually, he's fucking gangster motherfucker. I'm just like over here talking to him, dude, you're like above my pay grade. But anyway, long story short, their whole thing and like something that came out through that conversation was like, when you look at an organization like Vanta, like initially it probably started out as a bunch of engineers, but it's evolved into there's 4 salespeople for every engineer that's on staff. So the biology of that organization is now entirely different. So the differentiation that they're really is they can go and say, hey, we're an engineering first organization that actually cares about cybersecurity, actually cares about protecting your users' data, et cetera. And so when they go and they sell to other founders that are technical, who are you going to pick? You're going to pick the sales dude that is trying to pressure sell you into buying this thing that's just like a checklist item for you so that you can sell into enterprise? Or are you going to actually buy this other company that actually cares about your product, your company, the outcomes that they're going to assist you in generating by using them. So anyway, yeah, just a lot of random thoughts in there, but
yeah, it's there. You face as an incumbent the classic innovator's dilemma, and innovator's dilemma I think has been overblown, but there's real consequences of if you've built up the infrastructure and the organization and you're running and you have like certain amount of like revenue, or you have like pressure to increase profits, or it's hard to then like really completely pivot. And I don't know if you've meditated on this a little bit, but it does feel like a lot of companies that have been really successful, if they're thinking about integrating AI and like from the grounds up way, they will be cannibalizing their existing business in some way.
100%. I mean, it's happening right now in social media scheduling, right? That entire industry is about to be just like entirely eroded. If you own Hootsuite, or
I didn't think social media scheduling is my first thing there. What's happening there? Why is AI disrupting that space?
Totally. So they're bolting it on as like a upsell. And there's all of these companies that are starting to come out where it's like, hey, we're from the ground up. This is just built into the pricing structure. So it's okay. Am I going to go buy this? Say this is an example, an extra $29 a month package so that I can have AI write a caption about this? Or am I going to use this tool that's all automatically built into the pricing? And then also there's all this other stuff that they can build on, right? Of, maybe this AI agent is going through my back catalog and it's scheduling out posts and writing the copy for me. And then all I have to come in and do as a social media manager is just basically look at the draft and go, yes, no. I turn into a curator rather than somebody that's having to sift through all of this. And I mean, I don't think one of these companies is going to be able to build an agent that goes and does this. Like it would have to it would strip the fabric of who they are, right? And so I think with any big, I mean, we saw this in mobile, we saw this in everything. Like with any big technological change, this is what happens: is that any incumbent can suddenly be disrupted because they have to, like, to use that evolution example again, like they have to change their biology, but they don't want to, because in the short run, it negatively affects them, to get leadership to basically buy in that, hey, we're going to lose money right now so that we can make more money later. It's very hard to get that buy-in, especially if you have stakeholders and you're a larger organization, right? That's why startups exist, et cetera.
And this is to loop back to this example. I just kept researching on the side. How much does it cost to be able to run this for a social media background check company today? And the average rates are around $30 to $100 to do, right? So let's do a little, this is just like pretty simple ChatGPTing, but if anybody's curious, like how much does it cost these companies? I found these companies. Sorry, let me back up. I found these companies: Decisive, Sterling, Good Egg, whatever. Cool. What are the key use cases? Like pre-employment screening, post-hiring monitoring, workplace safety. How does it work? Data collection from publicly available social media platforms, automated analysis, which like there's APIs that you can call to be able to make sure like hate speech and everything is worked through. Filters. Cool. This one's a question mark in terms of how much it costs, right? We could do more diligence on this after a live podcast. But when I started to like understand what does it cost? What are they saying? Yeah, $30 to $60 per report. So yeah, average is $30 to $100 per social media, just for a social media background check.
Totally.
And then when you ask like why is it costing so much? What are the input cost? It's probably because you were mentioning the sales infrastructure before. If you have a lot of salespeople, it just changes the dynamic of the company. There's also pre-existing technology they'd have to build. They would have had to build before Gen AI came up. There's 100%. A lot of infrastructure and a lot of really like smart AI engineers that have had to do things without Gen. And they probably actually were pretty close to it, or even a little bit better. But the fixed cost on needing to invest in that and like even maintaining whatever infrastructure they have is probably so high that they needed to have some sort of margin on that. And so now, since you're building it from the ground up, what does it look like to be able to charge cents for social media background check? Is that possible today?
I was just thinking like the lowest price point of, could you do it for $3 and a 24-hour turnaround time, or whatever it takes to scrape the data, right? Because that'll probably be, I think, the limiting factor of like how quickly can I go through a TikTok feed, a Twitter feed, or whatever that ends up being. And then it's just a numbers game, right? Where it's, okay, how do we basically just get in contact with as many of these people as possible that are running these? There's probably, it's so fucked up, but there's probably like a social app like part of this. It's like you could drop anybody into this and then it like just tells you everything about their like digital. I hate that so much.
We dystopia is so bad here.
All of this feels like that, man. I don't know.
It does.
Anyway, but yeah, I think that social media vector is the right way to do it. Enter with that, and then you can go into more complex background checks, because naturally that's going to be what they ask you next. And then from there, it's like, cool, maybe it's $1 per social background check, and it's $10 per whatever their actual background check, or whatever that ends up being. My thing is, I always just try to be like, what is the current market rate, and charge 10% of that, and do it twice as fast. And if you can figure out how to do that with technology, it's like most of the times you can win from a selling standpoint.
So I love that. That's a great framework. Great framework.
Totally. Cool. So I think we've like established this is an idea that's totally able to be built. How do you go now actually implement this and do this? I'm just going to run through like a bunch of random growth strategies that I would like layer onto this to basically be able to build this out. So let me screen share and I can talk through this. So the first thing I would do is I would go and I would try to find anybody with like HR job title using one of these data reselling tools, whether it's Apollo or whoever, that it doesn't really matter. Look for the US and then go for, if there was an industry you're trying to go after, do filter down. You could probably just go after all emails I possibly can. Like looking at this in the US, right? Like 646,000 HR or individuals with HR in their job titles. How do I go and email all of them over the next 6 to 12 months? So infrastructurally, go and basically build out that cold email infrastructure. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. A lot of them are just built on top of, I buy multiple Microsoft inboxes and then I'm sending through those using something like SmartLead. Again, I won't go down the rabbit hole of cold email. There's a whole other, we could spend hours there. There's that same list. I would probably take them and I would import them into Facebook ads and Google ads to then run ad traffic to those same individuals. We're cold emailing them and then also running ad traffic or also running ads across all of the platforms that they would be spending time online to drive traffic traffic like down to whatever our landing pages are. And this actually works really symbiotically when you do this. So what happens is you basically get like people see, you almost make a top of funnel awareness. So then as you're cold emailing them, they become like warmer and they're more receptive to that because they already know, oh, this product exists, et cetera. And so we see this within the data, like when we run ads to the same people that we're cold emailing, just better response rates. So the next thing that I would go do is try to find like all the keywords that any of these software companies are already bidding on. So I would go and look for like background check software. I would find one of these companies that's spending money. So for example, like Checker, I would go and I would take Checker and I'd use something like Semrush to basically find all of the keyword phrases that they're bidding on. So if they're bidding on these, then there's a strong signal that they are profitable because that's like where you're spending your money. It has to be a profitable search. So again, background check, employee drug testing, criminal background check, go down this list and just basically spin up an ad campaign for all the keywords that they're already bidding on. So how you structure these campaigns is whatever the keyword phrase is, you're then going to take that and you're going to bid on that phrase. You're going to include that phrase within the actual like Google ad copy. So let me just go and I'll find a Google ad preview tool and see if this will allow me to paste it in. It's going to do Annan. Maybe this one will allow it. Yeah, cool, perfect. So what I'm describing is like that exact keyword phrase that you're bidding on, including that within the ad that you're showing, and then also including that within somewhere within the description. And the reason for that is when you include the actual keyword phrase, you'll see a higher click-through rate on that ad for whatever the keyword is that the person is searching. So I see this happen often, especially with startups where they like hire some agency and then some junior person sets it up and they just like basically bid on all these super broad match keywords and there's no conciseness of, okay, this keyword, this ad, and then this landing page. I'll talk through that in a second. Basically what you're trying to do is find the keywords that are highly likelihood of converting. We already know these will convert because these other competitors are bidding on these, We then go and build those ads out again. So somebody searches fast background check, they see this ad, they then go and they land on a landing page. Instead, and then on that landing page, what you're going to do is try to include that exact keyword phrase that you're bidding on. So this is actually a great example of this, where they include ready to run background checks in a modern way. What will actually increase the conversion rate of this page is if you go and you edit, or within that H1, if you are including that exact keyword phrase in some form, it can be in a sentence, but you're going to see a higher conversion rate occur on these landing pages. Why do people build out thousands of these landing pages? And you can see this here, that LP right there. This page is an orphaned page. And what that means is you can't navigate to this if you are like on the website. This is specifically built for search ads, basically, or for whatever Facebook ads, et cetera, that you're running. And so then the last thing that you do is you set up a conversion event for when somebody does this form submission so that the data gets sent back to Google so that Google starts to learn, okay, cool. When people search these keywords, they're more likely to convert on this landing page. So let's allocate ad spend budget there. But what this allows for you to do over time is you can actually identify, hey, out of all these keywords that we're bidding on, this keyword is actually way cheaper and way more efficient than the other keywords. And so then I can start to allocate my budget appropriately based off of that data that I'm seeing. I'm seeing, oh, I get a lead for $5 with this keyword. Every $5 I spend, it turns into a lead. In contrast, every $15 I spend on this one, it turns into a lead. So it's way more efficient to allocate more budget to that better performing keyword. And so this is how those campaigns can get efficient over time. So while this is all happening, the other thing that I would then start thinking about doing is writing just a ton of programmatic SEO content, AI like programmatic SEO content. An easy win for this space would be doing versus content. So checker versus high right, first advantage versus high right. So the reason for this is because this is bottom of funnel content, right? So if somebody's searching checker versus high right, like they are buyer ready, they're trying to like understand what are the differences. So if you can go and rank for that, you can actually take that somebody that's doing research about a competitor, but then get them to convert to you. So on this blog post, you then had a call to action above or after the first paragraph that's sign up for XYZ company. And then you publish all of these pages and then track those pages again with that, just how we set up a conversion event here for Google Ads. You can set up a conversion event as well for the organic traffic that you're going after. So you can see the actual landing pages that are making the sign up events for your company. What you should include on there as well is include an ebook download, include a newsletter sign up as well. We just want different entry points to exist for that page. And it's like different levels of commitment, right? Like submitting for a demo is way different than downloading an ebook, which is way different than signing up for a newsletter, but just different ways for them to go deeper within to the site. The other angle that I would go out or think about from an SEO standpoint is then going after any like question related keywords to background check, even if they're not really directly associated like with the product. And the reason for that is you're trying to build just basically authority within this whole niche and space. So like how long does an ESS background check take? Within a lot of these keywords, what you're going to see is these are going to be things that people search that are performing these background checks. And so again, just another way to get like a ton of traffic that's top of funnel into this. So the final thing that you then do is then as the Google ads were running, as you were starting to see keywords that were converting, then you would take those keywords and you would build out landing pages that are specific to each of those keywords, and you start doing link building to those landing pages. And the reason for that is we've already seen that this specific keyword, when we do paid ads, converts for us. So if we go and we rank organically for that, we're going to get organic leads. So that turns into your long-term investment, right? And then the other play would just probably be like, just make an absolute ridiculous amount of content, whether that's through podcasts or just doing short form social, exactly, what this is. And then again, grow an email newsletter out to that audience, that HR audience, and like interview people. I would probably make it a really entertaining show of the craziest background, the craziest employees that we ever had, or they tell like stories from on the job of what went down. And I think that's something that could probably go viral, but then that leads to top of funnel, like getting people into the orbit and building out that digital mass, your digital footprint, which creates digital gravity, more gravity for your brand. So yeah, man, that's a quick brain dump. Any questions I can try to answer on that?
How do you, I'll be mindful of your time too, but we can nerd out about this for 4 hours. When do you know what to invest in from a growth channel and when to not? I'm studying your content and I'm like, fuck man, it's simple and you're walking me through it, but it's overwhelming. I'm like, I don't know what to be doing.
That's how I feel about building full stack software, right?
Yeah. So for software, it would be like you first start with designs and then you go to this and then you go, so it's like so maybe that's like the response, but how do you think about it from a growth perspective? Do you just focus on, I have a podcast right now, I am posting on LinkedIn right now, I am just dumping my network, but then I'm like, oh shit, I should be doing SEO. How do you just have to do all of it and see what happens? Or like, how do you stagger it or be strategic about it? And maybe the answer is you don't, you just test a little bit of everything.
Yeah. I think first, just let me say this, don't do everything at once. Yeah, there's immediate burnout. You're going to 100% make that happen. So with all marketing, it's a lifestyle choice. Like you have to be able to do this indefinitely into the future for as long as the company exists. Like my rule of thumb is I do not start a thing unless I can do it for the next 2 years. And I can do it on a repeatable basis, whether it's every day, every week, every month. So I think that's the first filter. The second thing is meet your customers where they are. Don't try to be places that they aren't. For example, I don't know, an industry like skincare beauty is not on Twitter. So why are you doing anything on Twitter? You don't need to be there. Where you need to be is where those people are spending time, which is YouTube, which is TikTok, which is Instagram, et cetera. So I think that's the next layer of this. And then the final layer is I've taken companies to 1 million ARR with literally Facebook ads and like cold email. You most often can just do that 1 to 2 channels really effectively and make a lot of impact for a company, for a business. If you're doing crazy growth stuff and you're venture funded, it's a totally different game, right? Then what you're doing is you're layering on growth curves. And the best self-funded or bootstrap companies, they're doing this as well. So what do I mean by that? The first thing that you'll do is you go and you try everything. And then you'll look at the data and be like, cool, what created the most impact? Oh, we saw that this did it. Okay, we're going to focus all of our resources there to basically our time, our money, our mental energy to exploit that arbitrage as much as we can. So marketing is actually just an arbitrage game. I'm looking for my finite resources and I'm trying to distribute them as effectively as I can to create the most impact, which is revenue, right? And we just, to make it really simple, it's like ROAS, right? It's your return on ad spend. Like I'm trying to spend $1 and that turns into 5. And then as soon as I identify that, I'm trying to spend as much money as I physically can until I see a threshold or a ceiling on that channel of distribution. So I can give you an example of this. Like when we first started Swell, we were getting dollar signups. Those same signups now cost us $7, right? And the reason for that is because the market, that arbitrage, it went away, it evaporated over time. And my greatest regret always, and I have to live with this, right, is that I should have spent more money then. And like for every company that I've ever worked with, it's always the same thing. But it's always you always see it clearly in hindsight, but that's this component of it. So once you find that seam, like you're sprinting that as fast as you can, as hard as you can. So what naturally is going to happen though, is you're going to start to see the ceiling on the curve. As soon as you start to see that ceiling, that's when it's cool. How do I automate this? How do I delegate this? And I'm going to move on to the next thing. So you go back to the drawing board, you test a bunch of things, look at what the best performer is. Okay, cool. This is now performing well. So we're going to focus all of our energy there. So that's how you layer the growth curves. The other thing to think about, and like what I always challenge entrepreneurs to think about, is think about your like marketing strategy and really what you're doing, just like you think about your financial portfolio. If you're an early stage company, you need to focus on things that get you paid tomorrow. So it's very transactional marketing. If you're investing in SEO and you don't know if you're going to be there in 2 years, like immediately stop what you're doing and go and like cold email a bunch of people and run ads, right? Because you have to be able to basically pay the rent. And so again, to get back to that financial portfolio idea, when you're young, 80% of your resources go to just surviving, and maybe 20% if you're doing well is going to investments. As you age and get older, that flips, right? So it's 80% is going to investments, 20% is going to surviving. And so it's the same idea with a company. Like in the beginning, you're just like doing these activities that tomorrow are going to get you paid. And then as you mature and evolve, then you can start thinking about, okay, here's these activities that are going to pay out dividends. With that said, there's all of like you run an agency, right? It's like this podcast is incredibly powerful for you because it's a high ticket item. And you're going to have people that on a weekly basis sit down and they're going to learn about your ideas and your thoughts and spend time with you. And what does that turn into over time is that you're basically doing a demand generation activity, right? So depending on the business that you're in, there's different tactics that are going to be more effective for you. So if your average order value is, we'll say $100, right? Short form social is going to be able to sell that, but nobody is going to buy a 5K item from short form social. Like, where are they going to buy it? From something where it's long form content, whether that's long form written articles, whether that's a book, like and this is something that I didn't learn until probably way too late in my career. Like, why do people write books? Like, those are literally there to sell people. That is why they write them, because people that buy high ticket items, they read. Shocker. That's like something they enjoy doing. And so because of that, that's how it's like, it fits into kind of this marketing scope. And you see this really often, like, especially people that do consulting, like, why do they write books? It's because of that reason. And so you just have to there's different forms of media that is most impactful depending on what the item is that you're selling in the industry that you're in. But yeah, man, that's a crash course in growth. So
I've gotten quite a few now. And so it's helping. It's cool. It's been really nice to just watch and learn from the folks on YouTube and online that are really open about these learnings, like yourself. I'm like a big Greg fanboy, like all these other, like all these people, and actually start to use like the lessons and put it into practice. Like it works. It like different things will work differently, and sometimes it'll take a little bit longer, but it's really empowering to know that there's learnings and information out there in the world that could really improve the quality of your life or the quality of your business. And dude, you're really good at that. And so please keep doing that.
I'm still a student of the game, to say it bluntly. But for me, it was like, there's all these people that basically, there's this cascading effect. Anybody that's real, they're just giving it away for free. That's also the same thing for you. You don't need to buy a course. You don't need to do any of this. Anybody that is legit is just going to give this away for free because there's all these people before them that gave it away for free. So it's this natural like cascading effect. But I think I lost my train of thought. We'll see if it comes back. But there's something you said that anyway, we'll move on. But yeah, man, I with all this, just wrap it and put a bow on this whole thing. That in its core is like how you like think about a company. And I just remembered what I was going to say. I think for a lot of product and engineering people, they think that growth is like this black box and they're like, how does this work? But in reality, it's the same thing. As soon as you show them like, oh, this is a puzzle, and like, I like puzzles, and like you show them, oh, I can figure this puzzle out. And then I like have these levers I can pull, and then, things come out of that. As soon as they have that realization, it's just, it's game over. They suddenly OP, and like now they can build product and do distribution, which is like very uncommon for most people. That's why when you see solo founders that are doing that shit, it's absolutely ridiculous because it's extremely hard to have all those skill sets. And I love that Gary Can video, and he talks about like, here's the 6 things that you need to like be a founder, or sorry, found a company. And it's, you need design, you need engineering, you need, I think it's finance, you need sales and marketing. And it has this list of things. And a lot of the times, like if you look at Y Combinator as an example, like why do they go after teams? It's because it's very uncommon to find somebody that has all 6 of those skill sets. And those are deep T, every one of those being DTs. Way more likely to find 2 or 3 people that have a combination of different layers of different levels of that. And that's why you see so often that it's, oh, cool. Like you have a technical founder and you have the one that's more of the soft side of doing. And I say that now, but like the game's changing, right? Like growth is now becoming more and more like, can even just prompt engineer stuff so you can write scripts that are handling these things for you, et cetera. But anyway, the last thing to leave your audience with. So
yeah, I think this has been fun. It's been a fun experiment. We've gone from a early morning walk, which turned into text, which turned into a market sizing calculation, which turned into a Google trend, which was like, we should probably look into this and think about it, which then turned into some level of competitive landscape, which then turned into a diagnosis in terms of why certain things cost a certain amount of money, which then led to, okay, if I can spin this up myself, what does that look like? And how do I charge like 10% of the original cost? Cool. Like then before even building a product, I think that was like a hidden insight. I think that's what you're sharing, which is then you just try to drive traffic and see if there's a there and see if you can get some signups and then use those signups to be able to then say, okay, cool.
I'm running it for this right now in a totally different space, right? Like I spun up a landing page. I embedded a tally form like on the Webflow site, and we're just running some Google ads. Yeah, no product built.
No,
and it's just a free sign up, and it's cool. If I can also, it lets you assess what's going to be the cost to get this person to actually give you their contact information. If it comes back and it's $25 to get an email, there's no way I can scale that, especially if it's like a prosumer application. But if I can come over here and I can see, like I can spend $2, that turns into it. And I know that I can probably get 5% of those people to convert over time. And then what's the customer lifetime value of this person going to be? We can start to do that math. And this is something we didn't even talk about within the Google Ads side. You see this so often with people that are like, oh, we're spending so much money on Google Ads. You're thinking about it wrong. You need to think about it cool. Like this is an ATM where I put $1 in and $4 comes out 3 days later. So you have to think about it in that format. And so I think that this is, if you're listening to this, like literally right now, go build a landing page and go bid on AI background check, keyword phrase, and see if you can get people to go to the landing page and submit a form. And if you did, you just validated this company in at least the smallest form. You don't have to build the product beforehand. And again, I think so often, so many people are focused on like product first, distribution second. I think that is switching now. And again, like, why are we out here building owned media? It's because I want to have the rails. I want to have the platform for any idea that I have. I can just throw this out and I get immediate validation. But even further, it's, if I can get a company within 30 days to get revenue profitable, if I can get into 20 grand MRR, that means I can go hire a product person, I can go hire an engineer, and I can go hire like a customer service rep, and say we're using global talent or something like that. That company can then basically live on, and it can grow and it can improve itself. And so this is the game now, I feel like, in self-funding. Why is everybody investing in this? Why is everybody obsessed over this? Why are all of these people doing this? And that's why I'm here. And I'm not doing anything different. I'm just looking at the people that came before me, and I'm doing my own version of that. I'm just remixing it. And I always tell people to read this. Like, it is I think the most underrated book. It's called The Innovation Stack. It is the co-founder of Square, like the checkout system. It's not Jack. It's the other one. Exactly, that nobody ever talks about, who actually designed the hardware that is in MoMA, because it's so fucking beautiful. And he talks about like how like he thinks about building anything, right, that actually is an innovation. What really is happening is it's all these small things that are stacked together. And suddenly you get to 8 to 11 of these things. And when you compress that, it's an entirely new thing. It evolved into a new animal. And to think about this in a different way, at one point, a dog was a wolf, but you get 5 generations away and suddenly it's a different thing. It's that same idea. That's actually how innovation occurs. So
dog, wolf, and then Cody Schneider.
I hope my dog, man. I want to keep that energy, baby.
My dog.
Big dog energy. Dude, I don't know. My dad always used to wear these shirts. Sorry, this is so random, but I was thinking about it the other day. There's this brand. It's literally called Big Dogs, and it's just iconic. It's like this old surf brand from the 90s.
Oh,
but anyway, yeah, dude. Random ass shit.
Love it.
Yo,
dude,
thank you again for hosting. It's always a good time. It makes me just think through all this, so I appreciate it.
A little bit. Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
I love it, man.
Absolutely.